In 2019, a film came out with a mature rating. Not because of sex scenes, not because of over-the-top CGI, but because the story hit too close, too real, too quiet. The film was called Joker, and in its first 3 weeks, it grossed over $1 billion worldwide, becoming the highest-grossing R-rated film in cinema history. Not because Batman was in it, not because a superhero saved the city, but because of one simple thing. A lot of people walked out of that theatre and couldn't sleep that night. This film is the origin story of one of the most iconic villains in comic book history. But more than that, it's an hour and 42-minute portrait of a man named Arthur Fleck. Not the Joker, Arthur. A man in his late 30s, living with his mother in a rundown corner of Gotham City, working as a hired clown, dreaming of becoming a comedian, and every single day trying very hard not to drown. This isn't an analysis of the Joker as a villain. This is an analysis of Arthur Fleck as a human being, and why his story still lingers in our heads years later. There's one moment in this film. Just one. Arthur Fleck has just killed 3 men on the subway. 3 drunk men who harassed him, who hit him first. And what you feel isn't horror. You feel relieved. Sitting in that theatre or on your couch at home, you just watched a killing. And you feel relieved. That's not you losing your morals. That's director Todd Phillips and actor Joaquin Phoenix, who spent the entire first hour of this film quietly pulling you inside the head of someone who was never allowed to be angry, until finally he couldn't not be. And this video is about why that's even possible. Not to defend the violence, but to understand the hunger. Imagine you're opening an old box, one that belongs to someone you trust. Someone who has been your one constant your whole life. And inside that box, there are documents. Not photos, not love letters, psychiatric documents. And the name written on them is yours, as an adopted child. As a child who was once tied to a radiator, hit, left alone. This is what happens to Arthur Fleck. He's standing in a hospital hallway, holding those documents, about his own mother. Her name is Penny. The woman Arthur has cared for every single day, watched over, and faithfully looked after, was keeping a secret that destroys everything all at once. And Arthur's face barely reacts. That's the hardest part to watch. Not tears, not screaming, silence. Because his whole life, Arthur held on to a few very simple beliefs. That his mother loved him, that he might be the son of Thomas Wayne, a wealthy Gotham mogul running for mayor, someone important, someone who could give his life meaning, that his life, no matter how hard, had a reason to exist. Those documents wiped all of that out, all at once, without warning. His mother didn't just fail to protect him, she allowed him to be hurt. Those happy memories with Penny? Maybe just constructs from a mind too broken to tell what's real from what isn't. Thomas Wayne? No blood connection he could ever claim. The identity Arthur had been holding onto his whole life, built on lies, layer after layer, year after year. There's one small scene before this moment that often gets overlooked. Arthur opens his notebook, and there, among pages filled with jokes that were never funny to anyone but himself, there's one sentence he wrote in his own hand. I just hope my death makes more sense than my life. That's not a villain's sentence. Monsters don't write things like that. Monsters don't care whether their life has meaning. That's the sentence of someone who still desperately wants to be understood. I want to ask you something before we move on. If everything you believed about yourself, about who you are, where you came from, who loves you, turned out to be wrong, who would you even be? Because for Arthur, that isn't a metaphor. That's a question he faces literally, standing in a hospital hallway with those documents in his hand. And how he answers that question is what we're going to break down together. But before we can understand where Arthur ends up, we need to understand who he really was before everything fell apart. And there are 3 layers that almost no one talks about together. Most people watch Joker and walk away with one conclusion. He lost it because life was hard. And that's not wrong, but it's not the whole truth either. There are 3 layers beneath Arthur Fleck that are almost never discussed together. And if you see all 3 at once, this film will never feel the same again. Everyone knows Arthur suffered, but what rarely gets noticed is what he was actually hungry for. Not justice, not money, not power. What Arthur Fleck wants, across 2+ hours of this film, is one very simple thing. He wants to be recognized as a human being. That's all. Look at how the film shows this. He becomes a hired clown not because he had no other choice. He becomes a clown because he genuinely believes that laughter, real, sincere laughter, is the purest way human beings connect with each other. There's a scene where he dances alone on a grimy apartment staircase, earphones in, no one watching. He's not dancing for anyone. He's dancing because it's the one moment in his day where he's allowed to exist without anyone's permission. Look at how he keeps filling his notebook with jokes. Jokes he'll never deliver on a real stage, but he writes them anyway, every day, because he still believes that someday someone will listen. Even when he finally gets to appear on the Murray Franklin Show, a talk show host whose program Arthur has watched every night for years, he's not there because he wants to go viral. He's there because Murray Franklin is the one figure who has always felt like a father to him, even if only through a television screen. He wants, just once, for someone he admires to truly see him. And one by one, all of that gets shut down. Not because someone planned his destruction, no conspiracy, no organized enemy. Just a system that was never designed to notice people like Arthur. City-funded mental health counseling, budget cut. The medication he needs, no longer accessible. The job he worked hard at, taken away without warning. And that, precisely that, is more frightening than any conspiracy. Because there's no one to blame, no face you can point to. But beneath this hunger, there's something about Arthur that's far more paradoxical and almost never gets discussed. There's one thing that stopped me the first time I noticed it. Arthur Fleck, at the start of the film, is the most system-compliant character in his own story. Not the poor residents rioting in Gotham's streets. Not the young people burning the city down. Arthur. Every week, without fail, he shows up for his counseling sessions. He takes 7 different medications every day, consistently, on time. He goes to work even when his body is worn down, and his mind even more so. He cares for his gravely ill mother, alone, without complaint. He even, at one point in the film, tries to visit Thomas Wayne directly. Not as a threat, not as a demand, but as someone who just wants to be acknowledged, who wants someone important to raise their hand and say, yes, you exist, you belong. Arthur Fleck believes in the system. He believes that if he keeps trying, something will change. That there are rules that, if he follows long enough, will eventually make room for him. The Joker isn't an ideology he chose with a clear head. The Joker is the name other people gave to anger that had been buried far too long, to frustration that had grown too full to hold, to someone who had tried everything and nothing worked. And this is what makes everything so tragic. The crowd that later raises him as a symbol of revolution, wearing clown masks in the streets as a sign of resistance, they never knew that Arthur never wanted to be anyone's symbol. He just wanted to be let in. One door. That's it. One person who would actually see him. Maybe then, the Joker would never have needed to exist. But there's one last layer, the one that leaves you the quietest, the one almost no one talks about. Do you remember Sophie, the young woman living in the same apartment building as Arthur, who seems to become his girlfriend in the first half of the film? They go out together, they eat together. She's there for Arthur's important moments. Until at one point, Arthur walks into Sophie's apartment, and Sophie looks at him like he's a complete stranger. Because to Sophie, he is a stranger. Every one of those together scenes only happened inside Arthur's head. The film deliberately gives you no warning before that reveal. No odd visual effects, no shift in the music. You experience the world exactly the way Arthur experiences it. You're treated the way Arthur is treated, without being told what's real. Then there are the psychiatric documents about Penny, which raise serious doubt about whether Arthur's memories of his mother even happened the way he remembers them. And then there's the final scene. Arthur sitting in a white chair inside a psychiatric institution, laughing to himself, his feet covered in blood. A psychiatrist sitting across from him, waiting. There's one interpretation that many viewers and critics carry home after the screen goes dark. The entire film, maybe, is a story Arthur constructed inside his own head. A narrative he tells that psychiatrist. A fantasy about how someone like him finally becomes something. Finally has meaning. If that's true, the question shifts entirely. Not, why did Arthur become the Joker? But, how far can a person go to build an entire world inside their own mind, just so their suffering has meaning? And the answer might be, as far as it takes. Because when the real world gives you no room to exist, the mind becomes the one place where you can write your own story, where you're the protagonist, not the victim, not a number in a queue, someone.
I want to flip one assumption. One assumption almost everyone brings into the theatre and takes home without questioning. That Arthur Fleck is proof that the environment can create a monster. I think that framing is wrong. Not because he didn't suffer, not because his environment wasn't cruel, but because the word monster is the easiest way to stop asking questions. Arthur isn't a monster created by his environment. Arthur is a human being who was never allowed to exist, and ultimately chose to exist in the most destructive way that was left to him. That difference matters. Monsters don't need validation. Monsters don't sit in front of a TV every night, watching a talk show host, and imagine themselves sitting in that chair, laughed with, not laughed at. Monsters don't write in their notebooks, "I just hope my death makes more sense than my life." That's not a monster's language. That's the language of someone who still wants to be understood. And even in the film's most iconic moment, there's a scene where Arthur dances on the hood of a police car, his makeup smeared, his face covered in blood. Below him, the city is burning. Everyone reads that as triumph. But look closer. The look in his eyes isn't the look of someone who won. That's the look of someone who has finally stopped fighting, stopped being Arthur, stopped trying, stopped waiting for anyone to show up. The Joker isn't a crown he took out of pride. The Joker is a name he put on when Arthur Fleck was simply too exhausted to hold on any longer. And this is where this film sets itself apart from almost every villain origin story ever made. Villain films usually make you afraid. They build characters that feel alien, that feel inhuman, so you can sit comfortably on the right side. Joker doesn't do that. It doesn't make you afraid of the Joker. It makes you grieve for Arthur. And that, precisely that, is far more uncomfortable to carry home after the screen goes dark. Because if he's just a monster, we can move on with our lives. But if he's a human being, we have to ask, where are people like this standing right now, around us, in the lives we live every single day? And that question brings us to the final part, which is no longer about Arthur, which is about you. I want to ask you something, not about Arthur. Have you ever been in a room full of people and still felt completely invisible? Not because you're introverted, not because you're shy, but because you actually spoke and people kept talking as if you hadn't said a word, as if your voice never reached them, as if you, like Arthur, had been trained not to take up space. Have you ever felt that if you disappeared tomorrow, the world would carry on just fine? Not as a dark and frightening thought, but as a quiet belief sitting somewhere in the back of your mind, one you've never told anyone. Arthur Fleck didn't need poverty,
mental illness, or violence to become a mirror that reflects back at us. He only needed one thing: the feeling of being invisible. And that, the simplest yet most devastating experience in human life, is what makes this film refuse to leave even after you turn the screen off. Not because we agree with what Arthur did. We don't. Violence cannot be justified by suffering. That's not the argument the film makes, and it's not the argument we're making here. But there's a difference between agreeing and recognizing the feeling underneath. We know what it's like to have something to say, and no one listens. We know what it's like to keep trying, and nothing changes. We know what it's like to smile on the outside while something inside is quietly breaking. That's different from agreeing. That's empathy. And that difference is worth holding on to, because without it, we can't understand. And without understanding, we can't prevent. Because in the end, Arthur Fleck doesn't have to be a warning. He can be a question. How many people around us are standing in the same hallway, holding the same papers, with no one stopping to ask, "Hey, are you okay?" No long answer needed, no solution required, no need to know what to say after that, just that question. Just a look that actually sees. Because that's the only thing Arthur ever asked for, across 2 hours of that film, and no one gave it to him. I want to hear from you, not about Joker, about you. Who is the Arthur Fleck in your life? Someone who's there, but almost never truly seen. No need to share a name, no need for a long story. Just describe the situation. I read every single one. And if you want the next video to cover another character with the same kind of depth, drop that in the comments too. Because for those of us who love stories, the most interesting part isn't just what happens. It's why someone can become something they never planned to be.